They look so fragile, don't they? How have they even survived this long? The room buzzed with amusement. Representatives of the most powerful species in the galaxy sat around the enormous council chamber, their forms casting long shadows across the floor. Each of them had, at one point or another, conquered entire worlds, subjugated lesser species, and now here they were, amused by the discovery of humanity. They don't even have fangs or claws. No natural armor. Just soft skin, one voice scoffed, their appendages twitching in contempt. A deep chuckle rolled across the chamber. They're small too. Short lifespan. Hardly any technological advancements worth mentioning. How do they even qualify as sentient? The discussions continued, and the mockery only grew. Species after species took turns deriding humans, painting them as fragile beings that had somehow stumbled their way into galactic space. They compared humans to the prey creatures on their own planets, small, weak, and, by galactic standards, primitive. We shouldn't even be wasting our time on this, one voice called out. They're no threat. Not to us, not to anyone. If anything, they'll die out soon enough. Agreed, came the response. There's no point in sending expeditions to their system. They've barely left their home planet. We can file them as a non-threat and move on to more important matters. A sense of finality began to settle. This was just another day for the Council. Another species catalogued, dismissed, and forgotten. Another minor footnote in the grand history of galactic dominance. A single voice broke the comfortable rhythm of agreement. You're all underestimating them. Heads turned. The ambassador was an old, weathered creature, one who had seen countless worlds and species rise and fall. His eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the room. Humans aren't like the prey you're used to. They're adaptable, resilient. I've read the reports. They've survived conditions that would wipe out most of you. They learn quickly. Too quickly. A wave of snickering followed his words, dismissive, mocking. They survived by luck. You give them too much credit. They're just another weak species. One big enough challenge, and they'll crumble, another chimed in. Perhaps, the ambassador replied, unbothered by the ridicule. But I've seen this before. The species that look harmless, fragile. They're the ones you should fear most. The chamber fell silent for a brief moment, but only briefly. Then the tide of laughter and scoffing returned. The ambassador's concerns were brushed aside, drowned in arrogance. File the report, one of the senior council members commanded. Humans, prey species. No further action required. The ambassador slumped back into his seat, eyes narrowing. The meeting continued, but his words lingered, unheard by most, but etched in the quiet shadows of the council chamber. As the report was approved and filed, a faint, foreboding sense of error seemed to ripple, unnoticed, through the air. For now, humanity was deemed insignificant. The galaxy moved on, unaware of the coming storm. The predator stood at the edge of the clearing, muscles rippling beneath thick, leathery skin. Its eyes, keen and predatory, scanned the distant human ship. It had hunted hundreds of species across dozens of worlds, and every hunt ended the same. The prey ran, terrified, desperate, and in the end, they fell. But these humans didn't run. The creature's mouth curled into something resembling a grin. These tiny beings, with their soft bodies and fragile appearance, were outmatched in every way. They hadn't even attempted to flee. It was amusing, almost insulting, that they believed they had a chance. The predator's senses flared as it prepared to close in, savoring the anticipation of the hunt. Its kin moved silently through the shadows, poised to strike. They had perfected their hunting techniques over centuries: stalk, strike, kill. There was no creature they couldn't overpower, no prey that escaped. The humans were just the latest in a long line of species to be wiped from existence. The signal was given. The pack surged forward, expecting chaos, expecting screams and panic. But instead, they were met with silence. The humans hadn't scattered or broken ranks. They were calm, unmoved by the approaching threat. Their movements were deliberate, strategic. They weren't panicking, they were preparing. Defenses sprang up around them in an instant. Small devices hummed to life, casting shimmering barriers in front of the advancing predators. The creatures hesitated for a fraction of a second, startled by the sudden resistance, but they pressed forward. A trap. The realization struck too late. A loud crack echoed through the forest as one of the lead hunters fell, its body convulsing, struck by a shot too fast to follow. The others faltered, momentarily stunned. No one had ever attacked them like this. The humans weren't fighting with brute force. They were surgical, precise, exploiting every opening the predators left exposed. Confusion rippled through the pack. They regrouped, preparing for a more coordinated assault, but the humans had already anticipated this. They moved with unnerving coordination, laying down traps, creating diversions, funneling the predators into narrow choke points. The apex species, so used to being the hunters, were now the hunted. One by one, the predators fell. Their superior size, strength, and instincts failed them. Their senses, usually so finely attuned to tracking prey, were overwhelmed by the humans' calculated strategy. For every physical advantage they had, the humans countered it with intelligence and adaptability. The predator leader roared in frustration as another of its pack was taken down, this time by an unseen trap. It snarled, desperate to regain control of the situation, but nothing worked. Every move they made, the humans had already accounted for. This wasn't a hunt. This was an ambush. More shots rang out. The leader watched in disbelief as the humans pressed their advantage, not by brute force, but by outsmarting them at every turn. Their tactics were relentless, cold, and efficient. There was no fear, no hesitation. The predator leader realized, with a sickening jolt, that they had miscalculated. They had assumed these humans were prey. They had assumed wrong. The battle was over before it had even begun. What should have been a simple hunt had become a disaster. The few surviving predators retreated, beaten and bloodied, their pride shattered. For the first time in their long history of dominance, they had lost. And to the very species they had mocked moments earlier. As the predators limped back into the shadows, the humans stood, calm and composed, their defenses dismantled with the same precision they'd used to set them up. There were no cheers of victory, no signs of relief, just the quiet, cold efficiency of creatures who had done this before. The predators had learned a brutal lesson that day. Humans weren't prey. They were something far more dangerous. The predators couldn't accept it. The humans had caught them off guard, sure, but that was no real victory. It was a fluke, nothing more. Their pride demanded a rematch, and this time, they'd hunt properly. In the dense jungle, the apex species gathered again, their minds set on revenge. They had underestimated their prey once. They wouldn't make that mistake again. This time, they planned an ambush, one so overwhelming that the humans wouldn't have a chance. Their superior numbers would crush them. No more games. No more hesitation. They stalked the humans for days, watching, waiting. The humans moved cautiously, but the predators saw it as weakness. They would strike from all sides, flooding the area with their numbers. The plan was perfect. The humans would never see it coming. Except, they did. When the attack came, the predators expected chaos. Instead, they found themselves running headlong into empty space. No humans in sight. No signs of panic or retreat. Nothing. Confusion spread through the hunting party. They advanced deeper, scanning for any trace of their targets, but the humans were gone, vanished without a trace. Suddenly, one of the predators fell. No warning, no sound, just gone, struck from the shadows. The pack froze, tension rippling through them. Another fell, then another. The hunters were being picked off, but they couldn't see their attackers. Panic started to set in. Their instincts screamed at them to retreat, but the predators pressed on, determined to reclaim their pride. But the humans had anticipated this. They had studied their movements, mapped their behavior. Every step the predators took had been planned for. The jungle, once their hunting ground, had become a maze of traps. Their every move was watched, every advantage stripped away. The humans had turned the terrain against them, forcing the predators into narrow passes, funneling them into kill zones. It was like the humans had rewritten the rules of the hunt. The apex hunters, who had always relied on their overwhelming strength, were now facing an enemy that wasn't playing by their rules. Fear gripped them. The humans weren't attacking head-on, like prey should. They were using patience, waiting for the perfect moments to strike. Each predator that fell was another reminder that the humans were no longer the ones being hunted. The leader of the predators barked orders, trying to rally the pack, but the fear had already spread too deep. They moved erratically, paranoid, seeing threats where there were none. They were being toyed with, psychologically dismantled by an enemy that should have been weaker, slower. And then, they realized the truth: the humans had never been prey. They had allowed themselves to be hunted, to be underestimated. The humans had been in control the entire time, guiding the predators into their own downfall. One by one, the predators fell, their numbers dwindling until only a handful remained. Each loss brought a growing sense of dread, a sickening realization that they had been outclassed, not by strength, but by sheer cunning. The leader, bloodied and desperate, fled into the shadows, the remnants of the once proud hunting party scattering in all directions. There was no victory here, only survival. But even that felt uncertain. The humans hadn't pursued them, not yet. The predator leader's mind raced. This wasn't just a loss. It was a complete inversion of everything they had known. The prey had become the predators, and they were out there, somewhere, waiting for the right moment to strike again. The leader managed to escape, barely. But the loss, undeniable, humiliating, hung heavy in the air. For the first time, the predators felt something unfamiliar gnawing at them. Fear. The Galactic Council chamber was abuzz with confusion as the transmission played. What started as a routine update from one of the galaxy's most fearsome predator species quickly spiraled into disbelief. The report was grim: an apex predator race, undefeated for millennia, utterly crushed by humans, those weak, fragile creatures the Council had once deemed laughable. The details were almost too absurd to take seriously. The predators had tried to hunt the humans, only to find themselves outmaneuvered, outsmarted, and decimated. "How is this possible?" one council member finally blurted, breaking the stunned silence. "They're nothing but primitive prey." Whispers filled the room. The council had dismissed humans from the start: soft-skinned, short-lived, technologically inferior. How could these same beings have brought a dominant predator species to its knees? The ambassador, the one who had warned them before, rose from his seat. He wasn't gloating, though his earlier warning had been laughed off. Now, his voice was calm but sharp as he addressed the council. "I told you," he said, scanning the room. "Humans are not what they seem. You looked at their appearance and judged them prey. But they evolved on a world of constant danger. Their fragility is deceiving. They are adaptable, intelligent, and they don't fight like prey. They fight like predators." The council was silent. Some looked away, embarrassed. Others still clung to their disbelief. How could they possibly defeat a species that has hunted for thousands of years? One counselor demanded, his voice tinged with frustration. "This has to be an exaggeration." "No," the ambassador said, his tone unyielding. "It's not. They didn't rely on brute strength, but strategy. They used their environment, their technology. They lured the predators into traps, studied their movements, exploited every weakness." A murmur rippled through the room. If what the ambassador said was true, it meant humanity was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. "So, what do we do?" another voice asked, trying to mask the uncertainty that crept into the conversation. "Are they a threat to the galaxy? Should we act now before they spread further?" A fierce debate erupted. Some council members called for swift, decisive action. They argued that humanity should be contained before they grew more dangerous, before they could challenge the balance of power. But others hesitated. Contain them? How? We underestimated them once, a different voice spoke, calmer, but no less serious. Do you think they'll fall for the same mistake twice? What if they see us as a threat and retaliate? We don't even know the full extent of their capabilities. The ambassador nodded in agreement. Humans are unpredictable. Their strength lies in their ability to adapt. Every new challenge only makes them stronger, more dangerous. If we provoke them, we may face something we're not prepared for. Tension hung heavy in the room. They had grossly misjudged humanity, and now they were left grappling with the consequences. The predator species' defeat was a glaring warning. If humanity could defeat one of the galaxy's most dominant hunters, what else were they capable of? One counselor, older and wiser than most, stood and surveyed the room. It may already be too late, he said, his voice soft but filled with the weight of truth. Humanity is spreading. They've tasted victory. If we act rashly now, we may be the ones who face extinction. The chamber fell into a deep silence. The truth was undeniable now. Humanity was no longer a footnote in the galaxy's history. They were a force that could no longer be ignored. And perhaps, a storm that no one could stop. The predator's eyes watched from the shadows, distant but vigilant. It had been years since their first encounter with humans, years since the predator species had learned the hard way that these fragile-looking creatures were not prey. Now, they lived in a galaxy where humans thrived. Colonies had spread across new worlds, their presence felt everywhere. The predator still remembered the humiliation of that first defeat, and the fear that had followed. Humans had not changed much physically. They still lacked claws, fangs, and the raw power that defined other apex species. But their minds were unmatched. The predator had learned that humans were never about brute strength. They were about strategy, patience, and understanding their enemy's weaknesses. They were hunters of the highest order, not with physical prowess, but with relentless adaptability. The predator species no longer hunted humans. They couldn't. The tables had turned. Humans were now a rival, a threat that lingered just beyond reach. Every encounter between their kind was a delicate dance, filled with tension. No more underestimation. They knew better now. To challenge a human meant certain disaster, because humans never fought unless they knew they could win. The predator had learned to respect this quiet, calculating enemy. Fear had turned to caution. Caution had turned to wariness. They could not afford to make the same mistake again. The human strength lay not in their appearance but in their ability to survive and dominate in ways no one expected. As the predator continued to observe the bustling human colony from afar, a realization settled over it, one that the entire galaxy had come to understand. Humans were not prey. They never had been. They were predators, hiding in plain sight. Quiet, patient, and far more dangerous than anyone had ever imagined. And as humanity's reach continued to grow, the galaxy braced itself for what would come next. This was only the beginning.